You are your harshest critic. I think most artists kind of know what that means, whether you draw, or if you're a musician, or an author, or a content creator, or if you're just any kind of creative. And it can feel like there are good reasons for that. Sometimes we self-deprecate to motivate ourselves. You might feel like if you constantly tell yourself that you can do better, then you can improve more, and you don't want to plateau by letting yourself be satisfied with where you're at. Or it could be because you want to protect yourself from potential feedback that you might get from other people under the impression that if you've already heard it before, then maybe it won't bother you as much. And there are aspects of all of those things that I do think ring true. If you're not able to critique yourself, then it's true that you probably won't improve very quickly, if at all. And if you're not used to hearing criticism, then it's true that when you receive it from another person, you might feel defensive rather than motivated. But something I've started to recognize over the years with all different kinds of hobbies is that there is a point where self-critique turns wholly to self-deprecation, and it hurts more than it helps. And sometimes we're molded so heavily to that hypercritical mindset that we don't even realize what we're doing isn't really helping. Where it's not really about improvement anymore, you're not really critiquing what you made. The focus has shifted to putting yourself down as much as you can at every opportunity. And that's something that I wanted to talk about in today's upload. I feel like it's especially relevant to July's art fight event this year too, because there's just so much self-judgment that goes into it, both with features like the polish button or just with your decision to get involved with the event at all. Since I hear so many people saying that they didn't participate this year because they just didn't feel like their art was good enough, which is kind of crazy, especially because it's a free event and your skill level really doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you should participate. And speaking of art fight, I hope that everyone's art fight went well. In the background of the video, you should see me finishing up one of my last art fight attacks from this year. And something that I tried my hand at doing for this attack was making a fun patterned background, which I learned from a class from the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning platform for creatives of all different mediums. It provides thousands of opportunities to take classes led by professionals in many areas like animation, illustration, design, freelance, and more. Something I personally loved when I started to take a look around was that they really do have classes of such a variety of topics, including in-depth tutorials of individual programs. I watched a class called Creating Patterns in Procreate Half Drop Repeats, and right off the bat, I learned about this stacking feature in the app that I genuinely had no idea existed, even in my years of using it. This will keep me so much more organized in the future. I've genuinely never seen anyone do this before, and I wasn't even expecting to learn that. If you're trying to find ways to keep yourself busy this summer and maybe you had something you've been really wanting to learn, you can join and use that extra time to make it happen. And if you want to give it a try, the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so get started today. Taking a constant critical approach to everything you create or do can really warp the way your mind consciously and subconsciously values your own efforts. We don't like to be wrong. When you have an idea in your head, you usually do want to prove yourself right, even if the thing you're trying to prove is something that you'd rather not even be true. I've talked about confirmation bias on this channel before. It's just seemingly relevant to a lot of the subjects I cover, I guess. But essentially, this concept is the human tendency to always seek evidence that confirms our initial belief and reject evidence that contradicts it. It's like when you're writing a paper for some school thing and you see that one article that says the opposite of whatever you were saying, and you're too lazy to switch the focus of the essay, so you just conveniently pretend you didn't see it and you move on to the next article that says exactly what you were saying. That's what confirmation bias is. But it does go both ways, both to make ourselves feel right about something or to make ourselves feel right that we were wrong about something. We've all had bad days, for example. You know when you wake up and pretty early on something shitty happens to you and now the rest of the day feels like everywhere you turn is just more bad news, more bad luck, more misfortune? I'm big on journaling, and when I have days like this, I go on listing all the terrible things that happened and telling myself, today just really wasn't my day. But that's also kind of confirmation bias. When the first bad thing happened, you were instantly in a bad mood, and even if something good happened here and there throughout the day, you're really focused on that negative side, and you might not have even noticed it. Or you may have rejected opportunities presented to you of pleasant events. And pull up a chair, I'm sorry for boring you, I swear I have a point here. The reason I bring this up is because when you drive a perspective into your head that you are repeating like a broken record, you start trying to prove it to yourself wherever and whenever you can. And yes, this is true even for jokes, if you're thinking about them often enough. So when you say that your art sucks 5 times a week, every single time you create something that doesn't impress you, it demotivates you even more. And that doesn't really help you much after a while. It just makes you not want to draw anything because you feel like you're not good enough for your own standards. But the great thing about the human mind is that a good way to kind of break that mindset is to tell yourself the opposite, because even if to you it's a lie at first, you will start to believe it if you tell yourself you're a human being capable of improvement often, and you reject any contradicting thoughts. Your brain can be trained, it's just another part of your body. You can be in control. You shouldn't feel like you're fighting with yourself. Confidence is a big part of art quality, popularity, and motivation. When you observe more professional artists that have been drawing for decades, you'll notice that when they self-critique, they're very specific about areas that they can improve or do better at, and you'll almost never really see them saying that their art is just straight up bad. Because they're confident at what they're good at, because their art is their whole world, and because they know that self-deprecation isn't really doing them any favors. And when it comes to jokes, it's kind of a different playing field, and maybe it's not necessarily tearing down your ability to improve, but it can be received a little awkwardly at the very least. I definitely think this is more common with younger teens or tweens filling the silence by saying, "My art sucks, my art is so bad," and things like that. It can look a little attention-seeking, even if that wasn't the intention, because there's not really many good ways to respond to a joke like this. A lot of people might take you seriously or assume your joke was based on something true and try to comfort and reassure you. But in turn, because they felt forced by the context, what they're saying isn't really genuine. The most genuine compliments you'll receive are the ones you didn't ask for, and it will take some time before you can build up a friend group or audience to experience that, but it'll be a lot more rewarding when it happens that way. I think another thing that might prompt people to self-deprecate is comparison. Like when you're talking to another artist that's way more experienced than you and you really don't feel like you two are on the same level, and you try to kind of establish that by degrading your work or bringing up where you can improve in places that they already have. But honestly, comparing yourself to others and letting it change your attitude to your own work always felt a little odd to me in an artistic context, because art is such a weird, unique concept, and everyone is kind of doing their own thing and has their own goals about where they want to be and what they want to make. Something I've always kind of gone by is that when you draw something, you are creating something that didn't exist before you drew it, and that's why people value art for so many different reasons. I feel like it's not the right attitude to hate on yourself when you run across someone better than you, because honestly, there will always be someone out there who is. I don't think you should feel anything less than motivated when you see an artist at a different stage than you, knowing it's possible for you to be there too someday. Something I do want to make clear is criticism is definitely important, especially from yourself. If you dodge every opportunity to analyze your own flaws or hear them from others, then you will not improve. I think what's important is that you always remember that you're criticizing your work, not yourself. You're criticizing the drawing, not you. Not that criticizing a mindset isn't somewhat necessary sometimes, but that's a different kind of worms I'll talk about in a bit. Just saying that your art sucks isn't really doing anything for you. Just saying that you don't like it isn't really doing anything for you. Just saying that someone else is better than you isn't really doing anything for you. It's the why that helps. Why doesn't your art look the way you want it to? Why don't you like it? Why is someone else better than you? That's the key to effective self-critique. It's good to know the difference. And like I brought up, what about when we really are the problem? What about when you're too lazy to draw or leave your comfort zone, and that's the reason you're not improving? Well, you can criticize that mindset, but it's important to be understanding with yourself about it. Just feeling like, ugh, I can never do anything right, my art sucks and it's my fault, isn't necessarily going to help you. Again, it's good to analyze that why. For me personally, half the time I'm not drawing when I probably should be, it's because there's something else I should be doing that I'm procrastinating on, but I don't want to start drawing when it's not finished, if that makes sense, because I'll feel antsy knowing that I still haven't done it. So after I just force myself off the couch to go do the laundry or something, I feel a lot more comforted about spending the next few hours drawing. Whatever it is for you, honestly, taking that approach is a lot more helpful. But Ash, what if I cope with various struggles through humor, and self-deprecating everything I do in every conversation is just my coping mechanism? I see this brought up pretty frequently, and not for no reason. I definitely understand where you might be coming from with this. But something important to recognize is just because something is a way to cope, that doesn't necessarily make it a good one. And I think it's important to kind of expose yourself to the reasons that it isn't helping you to start breaking that habit. Bad habits don't just go away on their own. You really need to internalize why they're bad for progress to actually be made. I think when some people hear a compliment, their first reaction is denial, because they're either so used to hearing the opposite from others or from themselves, or they genuinely don't believe what they're hearing. And then in that situation, their first reaction is to reject it and say something like, You think my art is good? No, my art is terrible. But this kind of thing creates such a negative echo chamber for yourself where you're not even letting any positivity in, so it's not getting better. People who say nice things about you never have to, and they're not doing so because they want you to prove them wrong. As silly as it might seem, if this sounds like you, it's important to just practice responding with thank you, because that's all you ever need to say, and you need to go against that gut reaction to show them why you didn't deserve any sort of kindness or appreciation. Because you're wrong, and you do. And that's all for today. If this video does feel familiar to you somehow, then congratulations, you're old, because 3 or 4 years ago I did make something like this, except it was 4 minutes long, and I still had my braces or palette expander or whatever, and sounded like this. It's something I did want to talk about. I think everyone kind of needs a little reminder sometimes, I guess. By the way, I hope everyone had a great art fight. I'm genuinely super happy with how this year went. Feel free to share your closing thoughts on the event in the comments if you want to. All the art that I saw was lovely. If you haven't gotten a comment on an attack from me yet, just trust that I'm getting to it. Again, the rate limit on being able to post a comment means it'll take me hours to actually be able to comment on everything, but I'm going to eventually, so just don't feel weird if you get a really late comment from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.